CD 2. 3.1. Theme 3. Managing to be successful. Lesson 3.1. Vocabulary for listening. Important versus urgent. Exercise B. Listen to part of a lecture on the management of to-do lists. Number the word or phrase to complete each sentence.
1. Have you ever said, "I'm hopeless at managing my time"? Everyone has to deal with the issue of. 2. One of the most useful tools of time management is. 3. But to-do lists often get longer and longer and become a waste of time. In the end, the to-do list itself can make us feel. 4. You can't do everything at the same time. It's. 5. So you have to. 6. In other words, you have to number the items on the list in. 7. This sounds easy, but it's not. The problem is sometimes called important versus. 8. This is a problem which everybody. 9. The management consultant Althea de Brule points out that other people often give us the. 10. They say to you, "You must do this now," but only you can say if something is.
.2. Exercise C1. Listen to some advice about using to-do lists.
Go through your to-do list and mark each point A, B, C, or D. Give an A rating to things which are important and urgent, and a B to things which are important but not urgent. C is for things which are urgent but not important, while D, of course, is given to things which are not urgent and not important. In fact, D things should probably be crossed out.
.3. Exercise D2. Listen and check your answers.
Useful, useless. Stressful, wasteful. Hopeful, hopeless. Truthful, careful, careless. Beautiful, harmful, harmless. Timeless, fearful, fearless.
.4. Lesson 3.2. Real-time listening. Work versus time. Exercise A. Listen to some sentences. Find the correct photograph on the opposite page for each sentence.
1. How come they have time to have fun?
2. I always have so much work to do.
3. I am so late. The lecturer is going to be furious.
4. I'm never going to finish all this tonight.
5. If only we had a bigger flat.
6. It's difficult. Every time I sit down to study somewhere, my friends turn up.
7. The lecture is boring, but you still shouldn't fall asleep.
8. The tutorial started at 9. Where have you been?
9. We get a lot of work done together in our study group.
3.5.
I'm going to talk to you today about a problem. It's a problem which all of us face at one time or another. It's a problem which starts when you're a student. If you don't solve it then, it'll get worse and worse. When you leave university and get a job, the problem will follow you. The problem is managing time. It is so important that Harvard Business Press published a whole book on the subject in 2006. Melissa Raffoni wrote in the introduction, managing your time is much more than making a to-do list. Let's see what managing time is all about.
.6.
Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about the reason for managing time. Why do we have to manage our time? Then I'm going to explain the basic equation of time management. You know equations from mathematics, 1 + 2 = 3. Well, there is a basic equation in time management which is very useful. Finally, I'm going to look at ways of making the equation balance. As I'm sure you know from maths, equations must balance. Both sides must be the same. How can you make the time management equation balance?
.7.
So, first, why must we manage our time? The reason is simple. If we don't manage our time today, the problem will be worse tomorrow. Let me explain. This is the basic equation of time management. On one side, we have work. On the other side, we have time available. Equations must balance. Both sides must be the same. Work must equal time available. In other words, we must have enough time to do the work we have to do. How can we ensure that work equals time available? Let's start with the work side of the equation. You could try to reduce the amount of work that people give you to do. Some management books say that you must prioritize. You must decide what is important. Other books tell you to say no to work. But that's very difficult when you're studying. Everything is important. Which things can you refuse to do? None. Tutors expect you to complete all assignments on time. They don't want you to miss lectures because you are behind with your written work. Alternatively, you could try to increase the time available. You could get up an hour earlier or go to bed later, or you could reduce the number of breaks during the day. But I'm not going to tell you to do that. Rest and relaxation is just as important as work, to my mind. So, we can't reduce the amount of work we're given, and we shouldn't try to work every hour of the day and night. Are there any other alternatives? Let's think about the type of work you have to do every day. Basically, there are two types of work. Firstly, there is current work. These are the things that managers or tutors want you to do today. There's usually enough time in the working day to complete all the current work. But there is another type of work as well. This is previous work. These are the things that you promised to do yesterday or intended to do last week or forgot to do last month. All work begins as current work. Your tutor asks you to do an assignment, for example. At that time, all your colleagues are doing the same assignment, so you can get lots of help with current work. But if you don't do current work at the correct time, it becomes previous work. So, today's work is always current work plus previous work. The thing to remember is, do current work today. Don't leave it to become previous work. To sum up, work must balance with time available. You can't refuse to do work And you shouldn't increase the time available because rest is as important as work. The key point is, always do your current work well and on time. Then you should find that you will have plenty of time available without getting up at 5 a.m. every day.
Three point 8. Lesson 3.3. Learning new listening skills. Signpost words and phrases. Exercise C. Listen to extracts from the lecture in Lesson 3.2. Underline the stressed words in each signpost phrase.
1. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the reason for managing time. 2. On one side, we have work. 3. Some management books say you must prioritize. 4. There are two types of work. Firstly, there is current work, but there is another type of work as well. This is previous work. 5. You could get up an hour earlier or go to bed later, or you could reduce the number of breaks during the day.
Three point 9. Exercise D. Listen to the introductions from some lectures. Make notes of the organization of each lecture. 1. There are basically two types of work. On the one hand, we have work which other people give us. We could call that external work. On the other hand, we have work which we choose to do ourselves. We could call that internal work. Both types of work are very important. But of course, if you do not do external work, someone will be unhappy. 2.
There are three types of memory. There is sensory memory, which only lasts for a few seconds. There is short-term memory, which can last up to 30 seconds. Finally, there is long-term memory, which can last a lifetime.
3.
There are several ways of moving information into long-term memory. I'm going to talk about three of them today. Firstly, there is frequency, which means using new information a lot. Secondly, we have activity, which means doing something with new information. Finally, I'm going to discuss association, which is linking new information to existing information in our memories.
4.
Now let's consider global warming. Most people nowadays believe that the planet is getting warmer. But there are two ideas about this warming. On the one side, we have people who believe the warming is man-made. We are changing the average temperature of the planet with air travel, car exhaust, and burning fossil fuels. On the other side, there are people who say the warming is natural. It is part of a cycle in nature.
5.
We're going to look at the solar system today. Just before we start, I must tell you that there is one area of disagreement. It is quite a basic point. How many planets are there in the solar system? Some people say there are 9 planets. These include Pluto, which is the furthest from the Sun and very, very small. Other people say that there are only 8 planets, because Pluto is too small to be a planet. Finally, a few people think that there are 10 planets. They say there is a hidden planet which is 1.5 times the size of Pluto.
6. As we all know, the world is running out of oil. If we continue to consume oil at the current rate, there will be no oil left by 2050. Today, I'll examine this issue of global energy shortage in more detail. There are 3 main solutions to the problem. We could try to change our lifestyles. In particular, we could use cars and planes less. Alternatively, we could try to use energy more efficiently. We could build houses and office blocks in a better way so they lose less heat. Finally, we could try to replace oil as an energy source. We could build more nuclear power stations, and we could develop the technology of renewable sources like wind, wave and solar power. (3.10) Lesson 3.4. Grammar for listening. Verb plus infinitive. Grammar box 13. Listen to the sentences. How is to pronounced?
The student promised to finish the work yesterday. I intend to write the essay next week. Students can't refuse to attend lectures. You could try to reduce the amount of work. Everyone must remember to complete assignments on time. You have to do all the work.
(3.11) Exercise A. Listen to each sentence. Number the 2 words you hear in each case.
1. You can't refuse to attend lectures.
2. You need to complete a form in the computer centre.
3. Children often want to watch too much television.
4. Some people prefer to live on their own.
5. Most young people in Britain learn to drive at the age of 17.
6. You must remember to read the notes before each lecture.
7. Sorry, did I forget to tell you about the next assignment?
8. The student promised to work harder in the future.
(3.12) Grammar box 14.
Tutors expect you to hand in all assignments. Books will tell you to get up earlier. They don't want students to miss lectures.
(3.13) Exercise B. Listen to each sentence. Write the object.
1. Lecturers expect students to take notes.
2. Time management books sometimes tell people to get up earlier.
3. Friends sometimes want colleagues to stop revising.
4. The researchers asked participants to complete a questionnaire.
5. Parents teach children to behave correctly.
6. Industrial psychologists help managers to understand the needs of workers.
7. The tutor reminded us to read the reference material.
8. The police forced the man to come out of the building.
9. His wife persuaded him to carry on.
10. My best teacher at school encouraged everyone to do their best.
(3.14) Lesson 3.5. Applying new listening skills. Self-1 versus Self-2.
Would you like to be a manager when you leave university? Perhaps the answer is yes. Perhaps it's no. But whether or not you want to manage other people at work, there is one kind of manager that we must all become. We must all be managers of ourselves. Today, I want to talk to you about self-management, managing yourself. This is just as important at university as it is at work. Firstly, I'm going to talk about a theory of self-management. How can you actually manage yourself? Then I'll explain the problem which comes from this theory. Finally, I'm going to look at a solution to this problem.
3.15.
Okay, so first, let's look at a theory of self-management. It comes from a fascinating book by a man called Galway. It was published in 1974. It's actually called The Inner Game of Tennis, but it's not just about tennis. Many psychologists recognize that the ideas in the book apply to everyday life. In his book, Galway describes two kinds of people. He says, on the one hand, there is the confident person. And on the other hand, there is the doubtful person. Confident and doubtful. The confident person says, I can do A. I remembered to do B. I'm very good at C. The doubtful person is exactly the opposite. The doubtful person says, I can't do X. I forgot to do Y. I'm hopeless at Z. I'm sure you've all met these two kinds of people. But, and this is the important point, Galway says that we all have the two types of people inside ourselves. One side is the confident self. Galway calls this self 1. The other side is the doubtful self, self 2. Which side is truthful? Well, both sides might be truthful. We all have things we can do and things we can't do. Things we intended to do but forgot to do, and things we tried to do but have failed to do. Right. So, according to Galway, we all have two selves. What is the problem with this? But how do other people see us? In some cases, other people see a person as self 2, the doubtful self. But in most cases, other people see a person as self 1, the confident self. The point is, people often see themselves as self 2. Okay, so is that clear? On the one side, we have the confident self. This is how other people see us. On the other, we have the doubtful self. This is often how we see ourselves. And this is the problem. We see ourselves in a bad way. What does self 2 say? Well, firstly, self 2 believes in everything or nothing. I mean, self 2 believes things must be perfect or they're terrible. Self 2 says, I made one mistake in that test, so I'm hopeless. Self 2 is pessimistic. The future will always be even worse than the present. Self 2 says, I got a C in that assignment, so I'll never pass the course. Thirdly, Self 2 thinks that a feeling is the same as the truth. In other words, I feel this, so it must be true. Self 2 says, I feel ugly, so I am ugly. Fourthly, Self 2 believes there is only one right way. Self 2 does not believe there can be several ways to be successful. Self 2 says, everyone should have a career plan. I don't have a career plan, so there is something wrong with me. Finally, Self 2 thinks single actions are the same as permanent situations. To put it in another way, Self 2 confuses I did with I am. Self 2 says, I did badly on that test, so I am a bad student. What can we do about this? I mean, what is the solution? Galway says you must learn to value yourself. You must develop your self-esteem. You must recognize when Self 2 is talking, because Self 2 gets in the way of Self 1. You must try to replace negative thoughts from Self 2 with positive thoughts from Self 1. Self 1 says, I made one mistake in that test, but I got the rest of the answers correct. Self 1 says, I got a C in that assignment, so I'll have to work harder on the next one. Self 1 says, I feel ugly today, but I'm sure everyone feels ugly at times. Self 1 says, career plans are good for some people, but I don't want to make one. Self 1 says, I did badly on that test, so perhaps I didn't revise enough. So, to sum up, according to Galway, we all have two selves. Self 1 is confident, Self 2 is doubtful. People see us as Self 1, but the problem is we often see ourselves as Self 2. What's the solution? You must ensure that Self 1 does most of the talking inside your head.